So we're speaking today with Matt Brooke, Managing Director, UK and Ireland at Spartan. Matt, how are you doing?
Very well, Gary. Thank you for having me, and obviously to endurancebusiness.com for providing us the opportunity to chat. Very well. How are you?
It's great to have you on board. Yeah, I'm okay. In the scheme of things, obviously we're having a quick discussion off air. It's a weird and unsettling time. And how have you been?
Bizarre.
How have you been adapting with it?
Very bizarre.
So yeah, go ahead. Go.
No, just saying. It's been never in my working career, and I've obviously been in mass participation sports now for the sort of past 11 years. But have we had anything just like this? And that's not just from a life perspective, but from a business and world, and it's kind of been a bit bonkers.
Yeah, very much so. And how about Spartan? Have you been coping as a business?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting few months and a bit of an interesting journey for Spartan. We overnight we pivoted from a live event organizer business to the digital world. We spent a lot of time sort of looking at our content and how we're keeping our audience. Could we keep our audience engaged and active and with us? And we identified fairly quickly at Spartan that if you can't deliver what what we're actually out to deliver because of lockdown and because of governmental measures, and that's across the globe, then how do we keep an audience engaged? How do we keep them inspired? And how do we still resonate with them?
Yeah.
And that then literally overnight we just went from an events business to a creative agency that's pumping out content. And and the great thing, we haven't stopped doing that yet, but we're now trying to get back to the other cycle of actually filtering back in our events and our wider plans, our bread and butter, as it were, for what we do on the ground in live experiences.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned virtual, so it's supposed to be interesting to get your perspectives on virtual. So as you say, you kind of had to adapt. So alongside content, you're putting on virtual races. You had a couple of big initiatives within the virtual space.
Yep.
Maybe if you could give us your thoughts on what you think about virtual racing specifically. I've heard a couple of race directors being a little bit unkind about virtual racing, not quite the experience.
Yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, they pivot to virtual racing because obviously recognizing needs must. Do you feel that it's here to stay, or do you feel that it's just one of these transitionary things that we have?
Very good question, Gary. I guess virtual racing, I think is twofold. A, it shouldn't be knocked for a product in its own right. And I'll come on to that. But B, is it here to stay? And its sort of usefulness. Well, A, it's been extremely useful to get organisers such as ourselves, such as other players out there. I know the likes of the Triathlon England did theirs for the lead series, and others have followed suit. Is it here to stay? Yes, I would say it is here to stay. And the reason why it's here to stay is because what it's allowed, especially us, to do is engage with an audience that we might not have otherwise engaged with. So, let's just take in no sense of sort of layman's terms, but people have this perception that Spartan is something where you beat your chest, we all shout "Aroo" really loudly. You need to be this.
You haven't got a beard. You haven't got.
I've not got a beard. No, I'm pretty. Maybe too much of a pretty boy for a Spartan. But we're not wearing robes. We're not carrying spears. And don't get me wrong. We're built on the notions of sort of resilience, grit, and determination. But that can be anybody. Anybody can be resilient. Anybody can have grit. Anybody can have determination. But because of Spartan, you have then this predetermined idea that Spartan's too much for me. I can't do that. I'm not one of these people. And what virtual racing has allowed us to do is it's been able to engage with audiences, engage with people in the comfort of their own homes, in the comfort of their own gardens, in the comfort of which they own the parameters, they own the environment in which they're doing what we're asking them to do, which is our virtual racing, and therefore then realizing that they still can participate and they still can become a Spartan. Yes, albeit it's virtually and it's not a live course, but they get a certificate at the end. They get a virtual medal at the end, and it says to them, "You are a Spartan." And that for me has been, it's been phenomenal. 35% of our UK and Ireland, we did a UK and Ireland virtual race series. and across that we had just over 8,000 people registered to do those events across 4. And they ran from April, and our last one was just in Midlands in July. And ultimately, we took a race. We did a virtual race to replace every postponed event.
Right.
And 35% of those people were brand new to Spartan, of which since then we've been able to convert. I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but we've been able to convert those now into a real event. And we would have never necessarily touched them in the first instance, because they would have felt, like I sort of mentioned, sort of marginalised from, they don't fit the stereotype of what a Spartan is. So that then sort of leads me to sort of say, do I think they're here for the longevity? Then yes, I do, and I think other event organisers will cotton on. We talked a lot, haven't you, about the couch to 5K, but other organisers, even in the running space, for example. But if you did a 2K virtual fun run alongside the day of your main event, for somebody, 2K is a massive challenge, and it goes back to you're providing them that challenge in their own environment, of which they can go and they can go and excel in, and they can feel part of it. Which it will be. I think they'll become part of an evolution into then a main live event. I don't think they will necessarily. Somebody will say, "I've signed up for 25 virtual races this year, and that's me ready to go on virtual events." But I think somebody will say, yeah, do you know what? I found my feet. I found my confidence and my inner belief because of a couple of virtual events that I did. And now I've signed up to my first half marathon, or I'm doing London in whenever London's going to end up being, but next year or etc. But
week, won't we?
Yeah, we will, won't we? That which is sadly, I think it's probably I don't really know, but that'd be a huge undertaking to be able to deliver that in the current.
You made an interesting point there, because you said own the parameters, because as you say, we've seen this groundswell of people getting into running and into cycling. Bike shops are booming, which is just fantastic news, because they've struggled for a while. Obviously, running, everyone's has been out running, and that brings people into the sphere of what we might call endurance sport. Even as you say, if 2K is initially a challenge, and I think obviously with your brand, as you say, that perception of the Spartan roaring individual, with beard or not, is one that is perhaps a barrier. And as you say, the owning the parameters, if you're doing a virtual race in the comfort of your own home, breaks those barriers down and makes the race that much more accessible. So I suppose that's what you're saying, isn't it? That it effectively moves from being a necessity now, while you've got no real world events that you can put on,
correct,
to being a customer acquisition tool.
Yeah, it's a tool of engagement.
Yeah,
and I think don't get me wrong, you have to invest to make sure you've got a product that resonates and that does what it says in the tin. But I think if it's done right, then it will become part of then your wider ecosystem of events and that consumer journey. I know the likes of Ironman, that they've got a booming virtual race series like ours globally, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're exactly the same. They take that concept and they see actually
because with Ironman, they obviously the World Championships for 2020, which were shifted into 21, have been now cancelled, sadly, but inevitably perhaps. But what they have been doing with their virtual race series is putting up some slots. I think it's 75 for the 70.3 World Championship. So would you, with your virtual races, enable a qualifying or points?
It's actually something that we've been discussing at the moment across a global initiative, and whether or not then that becomes a tool to allow qualification to our Trifecta World Championships or our World Championships, still scheduled for later this year, and Trifecta World Championships in Sparta, etc. So I think it will be I think we'll probably follow suit.
Okay.
But I don't explicitly know that sitting here right now. But I guess if Joe DeSena hears this and thinks otherwise, then Joe, I apologise.
Well, Joe can confirm down the line, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I certainly think it's great what Ironman have done with that.
Yeah, definitely something that a lot of race organisers are keeping an eye on, which is inevitable. And I suppose now, in terms of returning to real world, which is the important thing, you have some races coming up in the UK, which is, I think, really interesting to explore what your what you're doing with those, what measures you're putting in place. Have you had to change your business models fundamentally to adapt to COVID, or is it more about making little tweaks here and there?
Gary, it's you can probably imagine it's been a bit of it's an ongoing headache, because by the week things change. So what you think you've got in place can always change, and all of our planning is ever evolving and adapting. But yeah, we've put our marker in the sand, and based on the latest government guidelines that were announced and sort of their pathway back to, I've lost track if we're at the new norm or if we're at normality yet, but wherever we're heading, we've aligned our plans along that within this new sort of under this umbrella of Road to Racing, which will see us deliver 3 live events in actual races in October, and we've been really fortunate as a global organisation, Gary. We've been able to test different operating parameters based on in different territories where they are in relation to COVID. So, for example, we've delivered an event in the US, in Jacksonville. We've delivered an event in Taiwan. We've delivered an event in Korea. We've had an event in Hungary only a couple of weeks ago. This weekend, we had an event in the Czech Republic. And we've been building as a global organisation what we call our unbreakable code. And our unbreakable code is it's a set of measures that we're going to be putting in place to safely deliver our events under COVID restrictions. And although the unbreakable code ever so slightly varies dependent on the government measures in that territory, broadly it's the same approach about how we can maintain social distancing and how we can ensure that our events don't become a hub of where COVID could be spread. And the great thing that we've learned because of all of these, and not that the previous events have been our test pilots, because they haven't been, because we've consulted with experts, industry, those with industry knowledge, with local governments across the board to be able to derive this before we even delivered our first event. But what we've then got since that, and since every event that we deliver, is we look at this globally and look at all the results and the data and how people reacted and responded to our measures. Did they arrive when we told them to arrive? Did they leave when we told them to arrive? Did we know, are these the common trends that we've had for this amount of people on site? What was the average temperature that we're seeing when we're reading people's temperature when they come on to site? How much hand sanitizer did we go to make sure that, it's madness. So the first event that we did in Florida, we ordered the amount of, I get confused between gallons and litres, they work in gallons over in the US, but anyway, we ordered an amount that we thought would be sufficient. And we actually ordered 5 times the amount that we actually needed on site.
Oh, really?
Because we ultimately worked that based on somebody getting to a hand sanitizer pump and using 2 pumps instead of 1 pump, and just where it was. And the reality is that people were using it, but I think they were using it more sparingly, understanding that everybody else has got to use it. So again, there's more that societal perception that the community thinks about others as well. So we're taking all these learning and lessons, and it's then just putting us in this amazing space for us then go and deliver in the UK 3 events in 3 months' time. Obviously pending and naturally evolving based on how we're dealing with our own pandemic here in the UK and then our response. But it's really, really exciting times, and I think again based on those, we're in Spartan the UK, we know our position within the mass participation world, and we're going to share some of our stats and data to help others, because I think for us, you don't just have to look at our own business, but you have to look at the industry as a whole, and kickstarting the industry as a whole is good, because we talked about everybody's now thinking about fitness, thinking about well-being, more and more with them coming out and saying the more healthier and active you are, the more resilient you are to COVID, is obviously a huge driver anyway. But we don't just need our own business functioning, we need the whole industry, because the whole industry creates noise and gets onto the forefront of people's minds to think about where is their next challenge coming from. So we've got 3 amazing races planned for October. We've also got some challenges that we're delivering, kind of like outdoor classes, which are called Hurricane Heats. In August, we've got 2 of them coming up. So low numbers, socially distanced, but they're ultimately class-led challenges that will get our community re-engage, re-experiencing live, live environments, and the challenges are amazing, because we did a virtual challenge across 4 hours, but these challenges are either 4 hours or 12 hours long, and you put people through mental and physical challenge, and it's all about team working. So whilst we can't teamwork because we can't all be together, everybody individually through these live challenges in August are going to be working together towards a common goal, even though they'll be doing it within socially distanced confinement. So really, really exciting. Can't wait to see how they come out, and the noise that they generate. And we've been, again, our community has been phenomenal. We've been, so many of them have put their hand up, they're joining us, they want to be part of it. So yeah, it's kind of the light at the end of the tunnel, it feels like, but it's positive. But at the same time, we are also, every step forward we take, we're doing so knowing that the parameters are always evolving and always changing. So our plans will always evolve and always change.
Yeah, which obviously we've seen recently with the Spanish quarantine scenario, where government obviously has imposed something very, very quickly.
Yeah.
With your events, let's say your UK events, would they predominantly be undertaken by athletes based in the UK? You don't get many travelling athletes coming in, or is that part of your?
No, so the majority are from the UK. And obviously, in all of our comms, we talk about what travel restrictions are out there, and you need to be mindful of what you can or can't do based on where you live and your government advice. It could be, if we had an event in which people, be impractical for us to deliver an event if we're in a local lockdown in somewhere, people traveling to that area, because that would just, that'd be irresponsible. But the same with people, people coming from overseas or abroad. It's, what are the measures in place currently, and at all times you need to follow the guideline. And our customer service team have been wonderful with talking through people about what options are available if that is the case, and if people feel comfortable to that. Again, it's the big battle, isn't it? Is, if you're delivering something but somebody feels uncomfortable to do something, like the airlines, for example, and if you've got a flight you don't want to fly, and we're, our customer services team, we recognise that, and we know as a business, and I'm sure other endurance businesses will know, we need our consumers to come back, and therefore in their time of need, which is now, we want to be there to help them. So yeah, it's something, but majority are UK based.
Yeah. And obviously safety is everything, as you essentially alluded to there. As you say, the athletes coming back have got to feel that it's safe to do so. I think we had a brief discussion before, going on record, that I think, was it in the US, where one of your, or some of your athletes said that they felt doing a Spartan race was actually safer than going to the grocery store. Yeah,
it's because of all the measures that we'd had in place. So the temperature testing, the checking, the sanitization stations, the disclaimers that you fill out on your form, and all the measures that you come on before site. Every single touch point that was a previous touch point has been replaced by a remote touch point or a screen or something. So and they were then sort of resonating that it's not like that in every other part of life. So why can't we just the event village in Spartan all of a sudden have a supermarket within it, because then they can do everything in one go. But no, yes, that was a really interesting insight for us as well, is that we know that the measures that we're putting in place are making people feel safer.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely the key thing. And if you can get that message out there, that as you say, that the experience feels safer than much of what everyday life does, that again should resonate. And I think that, I suppose the one thing, obviously with your US colleagues in particular, we've seen this, and you mentioned to it before, around helping other events out. So we've seen in the US there's the Endurance Sport Coalition, which I believe Spartan through Tough Mudder, obviously, Ironman, Running USA, and others. So they're petitioning Congress for funding, because I believe the numbers are pretty catastrophic in the US, as they are in many countries around the world. So with that in mind, I suppose as a backdrop, with the industry, and certainly in the US, which is the world's largest endurance sport market, do you feel that we're in a place where the new normal means we'll get back and it will be okay? Some will obviously not survive, sadly. Some events will struggle. I suppose the question is one that we put, with all of these sort of inside the news series of interviews we're putting to key stakeholders within the industry, is to Do you think we can weather this storm? Will we come back stronger? Obviously, things will be different in 21. With this groundswell of sporting activity, and with, as you mentioned, health and fitness being so important to keep COVID at bay in terms of human physiology, do you feel that that provides us with a sort of wave that we can ride, or will the structural challenges be so great that things would just be so difficult? In other words, I suppose, would you set up an event business now?
It's
a better way of asking.
There's no way. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that one, if I'm honest, Garen. And that sounds really politician-esque, and it's certainly not meant to be. But I guess I'm of a belief that challenges like this also present opportunities, and how looking at COVID and the impacts it's had on the events business. We've done a great deal in Spartan at looking at this, but it's how, what are the opportunities that are now born out of it? And, I spoke earlier about, becoming a marketing and content business that's creating new things to keep our audience entertained. That's an opportunity that's come out of this. We talk about virtual racing and how that's got 35% of new customers. That's an opportunity. So I think the businesses that will come out of this in the endurance world, endurance sport, and in mass participation will come out better are those who have identified and harnessed the opportunities that that's brought us. And you've got to have that mindset, because otherwise it is all doom and gloom, because ultimately we're not delivering what we initially set out to. And then the other one, I think is really key, is just how 2021 is managed. Now, I think whilst there always remains uncertainty, it's going to be a tough climate for any events business. And if that's until they've got a vaccine, or if that's until you passed through a proposed or mooted second wave, or whatever it might be, I think businesses who are able to sustain and navigate those. So in other words, planning 2021 to avoid areas in which or times in which could be complicated will be key. And then it's the other side. I think the real one for me is just about how businesses, and this will impact who really is surviving or isn't surviving, is how they keep their communities engaged and how they keep that community with them. Because it's all well and being saying, oh, you know what, we'll postpone an event till October 2021, and it's obviously not even October 2020 yet. And it's just, how do you keep all those people ready with you, not wanting to say, I don't want to do it anymore, and I like money back. So if you're able to minimize, those requests, and you're able to keep that person inspired, and that person actively engaged, and that person with new challenges, and with a reason to still work towards that end goal. And I guess, but that's one of the big thing, with endurance, is that everybody does our type of events for a reason. And either that they want to be that inner warrior, that sort of weekend warrior where, they are beating their chest and they're showing, how strong, outwardly that they are, or whether or not they're all the way through to, they're struggling, or they're coming back from losing weight, or they have their own personal goals or personal battles, or they're fundraising. Everybody has a goal for why they do our events. So businesses need to find out what those goals are and support people to keep those goals, because keeping that goal alive means you'll still want to do that end event, and not want to then pull out. And where losing what we've got already, and is where the difficulties come, because a lot events like or businesses like ours, and like most of the endurance businesses, they operate on taking in or selling registrations to then support the putting on the event, and you sink quite a lot of those costs even before you get to that event. So then suddenly people are pulling out and they're not engaged. Then you're putting your business in more of a tricky situation. So I think that those are the sort of the areas for me that I think will shape and change the way that we're then looking at things. And I also think I think as a result of it, by putting our communities, by putting our engagement really first, so not just putting on the event being there, that sort of moment for them, but by thinking about them more holistically, and what do they want to get, and that journey that they go through, we will, as an industry as a whole, be better off. We'll resonate better. We'll reward those that are with us better, and we'll grow and evolve from it. And I guess that's the opportunity. It stuck with me, but it was called Pick a Date. It was a campaign that we ran, and ultimately we said by picking a date, everything starts to matter. And you train, you focus, you commit, you plan, you think, you eat, all of those things, you fundraise. And so that's what, again, the whole industry for moving forward. Yeah, okay. All we're saying is we haven't got a 2020 date for you, but we've now got a 2021 date. So how do we then, you pick that date and we moved it for you, but how do we then keep that platform to keep them going? And I think that will be the sort of the lasting legacy that we'll have, is that no longer will those event organisers who stay, and I hope for the industry that there's many of us, but those those organisers who stay and battle through the hard times will come out of it, and they'll be that more holistic business rather than you rock from event weekend to event weekend to event weekend and nothing in between.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just about race day only, is it? You're absolutely right. It's that journey, that long journey that the athlete goes through. Which you think, as you alluded to, has always been there, but it's almost as it taken this crisis to realise that as a race director, you do need to be a content provider. You need to think of other ways of engaging constantly. Otherwise, as you say, you'll lose that athlete, and that journey will be ended, which will be such a tragedy, wouldn't it?
And I think we've developed ours, especially through as well with the mindset of our partners and our sponsors. We've got a lot of partners and sponsors who pay to have live event experiences and engage with our audiences. And again, it's not only engaging with, but creating new environments in which our partners and our sponsors can engage with our community. So that again, you're protecting that part of your business. But I think those that are able to see that and are able to take that opportunity will be here next year, and as a whole, will be, the whole industry and endurance space will be so much stronger for it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll all have to raise a glass or a spear to that for next year.
Definitely, we'll raise a spear. We'll definitely raise a spear.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Really, we could go on for forever, but you've got things to do. So thanks ever so much for your time, and I hope you keep in touch and find out more what's happening at Spartan over the coming months ahead.
Gary, really, really appreciate that, and look forward to seeing the rest of this year evolve with Spartan, but also to getting the industry back and kicking. Can't wait.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks again. Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.